Jin Park stood at his kitchen window, holding a cup of coffee. His eyes moved across his front yard to the house next door. Do-young Kim, his neighbor, was staring at Jin's black Tesla again. This was the 5th time this week. Jin took another sip of his coffee and checked his watch. It was 7:30 a.m., just like every other morning when Do-young would check his mail, while stealing glances at Jin's car. The pattern was so regular that Jin could set his watch by it. The neighborhood of Cedar Grove was quiet and clean, with neat houses and well-kept lawns. Jin had moved here a month ago, drawn by the peaceful atmosphere and the large garage that he needed for his work. He was the only black resident in this mostly Korean community, a fact that hadn't escaped anyone's notice. Just ignore it, Jin muttered to himself, turning away from the window. His home office called to him, filled with screens and equipment that he told everyone was for his remote IT job. The truth was far more complex, but that was a secret he had learned to keep well. Outside, Do-young closed his mailbox with more force than necessary. His wife had told him the Tesla must have cost at least $80,000. How could their new neighbor afford such a car? Everyone else in Cedar Grove drove sensible, modest vehicles. Do-young himself owned a 5-year-old Hyundai that he kept carefully washed and maintained. "Good morning, Do-young," a cheerful voice called out. Han-ji Lee, the retired teacher from across the street, was watering her flowers. She was one of the few neighbors who had brought welcome gifts when Jin moved in. "Morning," Do-young replied shortly. He glanced at Jin's house again. "Have you noticed how late he stays up? The lights in his garage are on until 2 or 3 a.m. sometimes." Han-ji adjusted her sun hat and smiled. Maybe he works with international clients. Time zones can be tricky. Do-young snorted. Or maybe there's another reason he's up all night. He walked closer to Han-ji and lowered his voice. "Yesterday I saw a truck deliver 3 large boxes to his garage. No labels, no company names. Don't you think that's strange?" "I think," Han-ji said carefully, "that you're spending too much time watching our new neighbor. Mr. Park has been nothing but polite since he arrived." Inside his house, Jin was typing rapidly on his keyboard. Multiple screens showed data streams that would have looked like nonsense to most people. One screen displayed a message marked URGENT, TDI command. Jin's fingers paused over the keyboard. The message warned of unusual activity in the Kuiper belt. Something was moving out there, something that shouldn't be there. He would need to run more scans tonight, which meant another late session in the garage. A notification popped up on his phone. The Tesla's security system had detected someone walking close to the car again. Jin pulled up the camera feed and saw Do-young slowly circling his vehicle, peering in through the windows. Jin sighed and rubbed his temples. He knew what it looked like. A black man in an expensive car, working strange hours, receiving mysterious deliveries. He couldn't blame his neighbors for being curious, or even suspicious. But he had a job to do, one that was far more important than neighborhood gossip. The screens in front of him blinked with new data. Something was definitely coming, and Earth needed to be ready. Jin straightened in his chair and got back to work. Let Do-young stare at his car all day if he wanted. Jin had bigger concerns than one suspicious neighbor. In his driveway, the Tesla sat quietly, its sleek black surface reflecting the morning sun. Hidden beneath its ordinary appearance, advanced sensors monitored the sky above Cedar Grove, part of a global network keeping watch for threats that humanity wasn't ready to know about. Just another morning in the neighborhood. But things wouldn't stay quiet for long. The garage door closed behind Jin with a quiet hum. He parked his Tesla in its usual spot, positioned exactly over a special panel in the floor. As soon as the car settled into place, hidden scanners began their daily security sweep. Jin walked to the back of his garage, past the ordinary-looking tools and storage boxes. He placed his hand on what appeared to be a simple circuit breaker box. A blue light scanned his palm, and a soft voice spoke. Identity confirmed. "Welcome back, Director Park." The wall split open, revealing a hidden room filled with advanced technology. This was Jin's real office, the command center for the Terrestrial Defense Initiative's Western Hemisphere operations. Screens covered every wall, showing satellite data, deep space scans, and status reports from defense installations around the world. "Computer, show me the Kuiper Belt anomaly," Jin said, settling into his chair. The largest screen displayed a cluster of unusual readings. Something was moving out there, using a pattern that matched no known natural phenomenon. A message flashed on one of the screens. "Director Park, urgent communication from Tokyo Command." Jin accepted the call, and the face of Director Sang appeared. The older man looked worried. "Jin, we've lost contact with 3 of our deep space probes in the last hour. The pattern matches what we saw before the Ryuk incident of 2019. "I was afraid of that," Jin replied, pulling up more data. "My systems have been tracking unusual movement patterns. They're testing our defenses again, aren't they?" "Most likely. How does the integration of the new quantum processing core? We need all systems at full capacity." Jin glanced at his Tesla. The car wasn't just for show. It contained critical components of Earth's defense network, disguised as normal vehicle parts. "Integration is at 95%. I'll have it fully operational by tomorrow night." Outside, Du Young was walking his dog, paying special attention as he passed Jin's house. He noticed a faint blue glow coming from the garage windows. Through a small gap in the blinds, he could see Jin sitting in front of what looked like multiple computer screens. "I knew it," Du Young muttered to himself. He must be running some kind of illegal operation. He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures. Back in his command center, Jin was reviewing defense protocols when an alert popped up. The external cameras had detected Du Young's photography attempt. Jin quickly pressed a button, and special filters activated in the garage windows, making them appear dark and empty from the outside. "Is everything secure on your end?" Director Sang asked, noticing Jin's distraction. "Yes, sir. Just some nosy neighbors. Nothing I can't handle." Jin pulled up another screen showing Cedar Grove's security grid. The entire neighborhood was actually a carefully disguised defensive position, with sensors and protective systems hidden in everything from streetlights to garden gnomes. "Be careful, Jin. We chose that location because it's quiet and unsuspecting. We can't afford to draw attention right now." Jin nodded, thinking about the strange deliveries he would need to accept tomorrow. More quantum computing components, disguised as ordinary computer parts. He knew the deliveries made his neighbors suspicious, but Earth's defense was more important than neighborhood gossip. As Jin worked late into the night, Du Young sat in his dark living room, watching Jin's garage. The strange blue light had disappeared, but his suspicions hadn't. He began typing a message to other neighbors, sharing his concerns about their mysterious new resident. Little did Du Young know that his prejudice and suspicion were pushing him toward a decision that would not only change his life, but potentially affect the safety of the entire planet. Above Cedar Grove, hidden in the night sky, Earth's defense satellites continued their endless watch, preparing for a threat that most of humanity didn't even know existed. The community center of Cedar Grove was unusually busy for a Tuesday evening. Du Young had called an emergency neighborhood meeting, and almost everyone had come. They sat in neat rows, whispering among themselves as Du Young stood at the front of the room. "I've gathered evidence," Du Young announced, connecting his phone to the projector. "Look at these pictures." Strange lights from his garage at 3 a.m. Unmarked deliveries. A car that costs more than most of us make in a year. The screen showed blurry photos of Jin's house. Han Ji-Lee sat in the back row, her face showing growing concern. She had lived in Cedar Grove for 30 years and had never seen the community so stirred up. "Maybe he works in technology," someone suggested. "Those companies pay very well." Du Young shook his head. "I checked online. There's no record of him working for any major tech company. And why would someone with a normal tech job need such heavy security? I tried to walk past his garage yesterday, and some kind of alarm went off." In his command center, Jin watched the meeting through the community center's security cameras. His face was tired. He hadn't slept in 24 hours. The signals from deep space were getting stronger, and now 5 more probes had gone silent. A message flashed on his screen. Alert. Defense grid status. Yellow. Unknown objects detected passing Saturn's orbit. Jin rubbed his eyes and reached for his coffee. He knew his late-night activities were causing problems, but he couldn't stop now. Earth's safety depended on the work he was doing. Back at the community center, Hanji stood up. "I think we're being unfair," she said firmly. "Mr. Park has been nothing but polite. He keeps his house neat, he's quiet, and he hasn't caused any real problems." "That's what they want you to think," Du Young argued. "My cousin works for the police. He says criminals often hide in plain sight, acting normal until it's too late." The meeting continued, but Hanji had heard enough. She left quietly, walking home in the cool evening air. As she passed Jin's house, she noticed him through the window, working at his desk. He looked exhausted. Hanji hesitated, then walked up to his door and rang the doorbell. After a moment, Jin appeared, trying to hide his surprise. "Mrs. Lee, is everything all right?" "I thought you should know," she said quietly. "Du Young has organized a neighborhood meeting. They're discussing you right now. The rumors are getting worse." Jin's phone buzzed in his pocket. Another alert from the defense grid. He needed to get back to work, but he could see the genuine concern in Hanji's eyes. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "I know my schedule seems strange, but I promise I'm not doing anything wrong." Hanji nodded. "I believe you, but be careful. Du Young is convincing people that you're dangerous." After Hanji left, Jin returned to his command center. The screen showed more alarming data. The unknown objects had accelerated, now passing Jupiter's orbit. At this rate, they would reach Earth in less than a week. "Computer, run analysis on approach pattern," Jin ordered. The response was immediate. 98% match to Ruk collective invasion tactics. Jin sent an urgent message to Director Sang. "They're coming back. We need to activate all defense systems immediately." In his house next door, Du Young watched Jin's garage through binoculars. The strange blue light was glowing again. He took another picture, his hands shaking with anger and suspicion. Tomorrow, he decided, he would take action. He couldn't allow this threat to remain in their peaceful neighborhood any longer. The clock struck midnight in Cedar Grove. Du Young sat in his dark kitchen, an empty bottle of soju on the table in front of him. His phone showed the photos he had taken over the past month. Jin's late-night activities, the strange deliveries, the mysterious lights. Each image fed his growing anger. He reached under the sink and pulled out a red gas can. He had filled it earlier that day, telling his wife it was for the lawnmower. The weight of it in his hands felt like justice. In his command center, Jin was too focused on his screens to notice movement outside. The alien fleet had accelerated again, now passing Mars' orbit. Earth's outer defense systems were ready, but the final calibrations required his Tesla's quantum processors to be running at full capacity. "Director Park," the computer announced, "final defense grid synchronization beginning. Estimated time to completion, 45 minutes. Jin nodded, watching as green status lights began flashing across his screens. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Then a new alert appeared. "Warning. Motion detected near vehicle." Jin switched to the external cameras. His heart stopped. Du Young was approaching his Tesla, carrying something in his hands. The security system began to activate, but Du Young had already reached the car. The smell of gasoline filled the night air as Du Young emptied the can over the Tesla's hood and roof. His hands were shaking, but his mind felt clear. In his alcohol-fueled state, he was certain he was protecting his community. "Stop." Jin's voice cut through the darkness. He had rushed out of his garage, his face showing not anger, but genuine fear. "You don't understand what you're doing." Du Young struck a match, I understand perfectly. You thought you could fool everyone, but I knew something was wrong from the start. The match fell. Flames erupted across the Tesla's surface, beautiful and terrible in the night. Du Young stepped back, a smile of satisfaction on his face, but his triumph turned to confusion as he saw Jin's reaction. Instead of calling the police or trying to save his expensive car, Jin was typing frantically on his phone. Emergency lights began flashing inside his garage. A computerized voice echoed across the property. Warning! Defense grid synchronization interrupted. Planetary security compromised. The fire spread quickly, consuming the vehicle. Inside, critical components of Earth's defense system began to fail. On Jin's screens, red warning lights replaced the green status indicators one by one. Director Park, the computer announced, quantum processing core is offline. Defense grid operating at 15% capacity and falling. Jin looked up at the night sky, where unseen threats were drawing closer to Earth. Then he turned to Du Young, who stood frozen in shock at the chaos unfolding around him. You wanted to know what I really do. Jin's voice was cold and clear. Congratulations, you're about to find out. And so is everyone else. High above them, hidden defense satellites began to lose power. Security protocols that had protected Earth for years started to fail. And in the depths of space, the Rek Collective detected the weakness they had been waiting for. Hanji appeared at her door, drawn by the commotion. Her eyes widened at the burning car, but something else caught her attention. A faint light in the sky, growing brighter by the second. Du Young saw it too. What is that? That, Jin said grimly, is what I was trying to protect us from. And you just disabled our best defense against it. The bright light in the sky grew larger and brighter. Cedar Grove's quiet streets lit up as if it were daytime. Jin rushed back into his garage, his fingers flying over keyboards as he tried to save what remained of Earth's defenses. Emergency protocols engaged, the computer announced, rerouting remaining power to essential systems. Du Young stood frozen beside the burning Tesla, the empty gas can still in his hands. Above them, a massive shape began to take form in the sky. It was silver and smooth, shaped like an arrowhead, and larger than any aircraft he had ever seen. Lights began coming on in houses all along the street. People stepped out onto their lawns, pointing at the sky and taking videos with their phones. Hanji walked quickly to Jin's driveway, her expression not of fear but of recognition. The Ryuk are back, she said quietly. Jin looked at her in surprise, but there was no time to ask questions. The alien ship descended until it hovered just 500 feet above Cedar Grove. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, and a deep humming sound made the windows of every house vibrate. What have I done? Du Young whispered, dropping the gas can. What is happening? Jin emerged from his garage carrying what looked like a modified satellite dish. The Rek Collective, he explained, his voice tight with concentration. They've tried to invade Earth before. We stopped them last time. But now, he glanced at his burning car. A beam of green light shot down from the ship, scanning the neighborhood. When it passed over Jin's property, the ship's humming grew louder. They detect the defense technology, Jin said. He turned to Hanji. Mrs. Lee, you seem to know something about this. I could use your help. Hanji nodded. I was part of the first contact team in 2019. I'm not just a retired teacher. I specialized in theoretical alien languages before the government classified everything. More neighbors gathered in the street, many still in their pajamas. Some were filming, others were calling the police, and a few were trying to get their cars to leave the area. None of their cars would start. They've disabled all local electronics, Jin explained. He was attaching cables to the satellite dish. Standard Ryuk invasion protocol. But they didn't count on our backup systems. The ship released a smaller craft, about the size of a bus. It descended toward Jin's driveway, its surface glowing with strange symbols. Du Young, Jin called out, not taking his eyes off his work. If you want to make up for what you did, I need your help. Take these cables and connect them to the power box on the side of my house. The red one goes to the top port, blue to the bottom. Do-young hesitated only a moment before grabbing the cables. His hands were shaking, but he ran to do as Jin asked. Han-ji stepped forward, studying the symbols on the alien craft. "They're using the old language," she said. "This is a scout ship. The main fleet must be close behind." Jin finished his modifications to the satellite dish. "Then we have about 6 hours to restore the defense grid before they arrive. But first, we need to deal with this scout." The small alien craft touched down in the middle of the street. Its surface split open like a blooming flower, revealing dark figures inside. "Everyone get back," Jin shouted, raising the satellite dish. "And whatever you do, don't post any of this online. The last thing we need right now is a panic." The dark figures stepped out into the streetlights of Cedar Grove, and Earth's first public contact with alien life began. The dark figures from the scout ship stood 7 feet tall. Their bodies seemed to shift between solid and shadow as they moved. 3 of them approached Jin, who stood his ground, still holding the modified satellite dish. "Mrs. Lee," Jin called out, "I need you to translate." Han-ji stepped forward. The aliens made sounds like wind through crystal. She listened carefully, then spoke similar sounds back to them. The aliens stopped moving. "They say they detected the defense grid failure," Han-ji explained. "They think Earth is defenseless now." Jin smiled for the first time that night. "Show them how wrong they are." He pressed a button on his phone. The ground began to shake. Jin's ordinary-looking house started to change. Panels slid open in the walls, revealing metal surfaces underneath. The roof split apart, and a large antenna array rose into the night sky. The garage door transformed into a curved metal wall covered in blinking lights. The neighbors watched in amazement as Jin's modest home turned into what looked like a military command center. Even the garden changed. The flowers sank into the ground, replaced by small defensive turrets. "This is a Class 3 defense installation of the Terrestrial Defense Initiative," Jin announced, his voice carrying across the stunned crowd. "And you are in violation of the Treaty of 2019. Han-ji translated his words. The aliens stepped back, their shadowy forms rippling with what might have been surprise. Do-young finished connecting the cables as Jin had asked. When he pushed the last one into place, lines of blue light spread out from Jin's house along the street. Every third streetlight transformed, revealing hidden defense systems. Cedar Grove was never just a neighborhood, Jin explained to the watching crowd. It's one of Earth's primary defense positions. Those streetlights are particle beam projectors. The park's fountain contains a shield generator. Even Mrs. Lee's bird bath is part of our early warning system. The aliens spoke again, their crystal voices more urgent now. Han-ji translated. They say their main fleet approaches. They demand we surrender Earth's resources. Jin raised the satellite dish. It hummed to life, glowing with the same blue energy that had once shone from his garage. Tell them to look up. Everyone turned their eyes to the sky. High above Cedar Grove, the air itself seemed to shimmer. Then, like a curtain being pulled aside, something massive was revealed. A defense platform larger than the alien scout ship, hidden by advanced cloaking technology. The Tesla wasn't just a car, Jin said. It was controlling our cloaking systems. Now that it's destroyed, we can't hide our defenses anymore. But maybe it's time humanity knew the truth anyway. The aliens stepped back toward their ship, their confident stance now uncertain. Han-ji spoke to them again, her voice firm and clear. What did you tell them? Do-young asked. I reminded them what happened the last time they tried to invade, she replied. And I told them that this neighborhood is just one of hundreds of similar installations around the world. Jin worked at a control panel that had emerged from his front wall, powering up the defense grid. Do-young, I need you to help coordinate the neighbors. Get everyone back at least 100 feet. Things might get bright. Do-young nodded, finally finding a way to make up for his terrible mistake. He began organizing the crowd, moving them back to a safe distance. Above them, the defense platform began to glow with energy. The Ryuk scout ship powered up its engines, preparing to flee. Earth was not as defenseless as they had hoped. Jin's transformed house glowed with blue light in the darkness. Inside, the ordinary furniture had moved aside, revealing a complex control center. Screens covered the walls, showing the approaching Ryuk fleet. They would reach Earth within 5 hours. "We need every installation working together," Jin announced to the gathered neighbors. "This is no longer just my fight. It's ours." Hanji had taken charge of communications. She sat at a console that had risen from Jin's kitchen floor, coordinating with other defense stations worldwide. Her years of secret knowledge were finally being put to use again. "London is ready," she reported. "Tokyo and Cairo too. But we're still missing something important." She looked at Jin. "We need the quantum processing power from your Tesla." Do Young stepped forward. "The fire was my fault. Tell me how to fix it." Jin nodded, seeing the genuine regret in his neighbor's eyes. "The processors can survive high temperatures. If we act fast, we might save them." He turned to the crowd. "I need volunteers." The neighbors who had gathered to gossip about Jin just yesterday now moved forward to help. They'd brought fire extinguishers from their homes. Others formed a line, passing buckets of water to cool the Tesla's remains. Working together, they managed to retrieve a small silver box from the burning car. Its surface was scorched but still intact. Jin carefully connected it to his systems. Processing power restored to 60%, the computer announced. Defense grid stabilizing. Above them, the massive defense platform began charging its weapons. The Ryuk scout ship had retreated to the larger vessel above, but they weren't leaving. They were waiting for something. "Energy surge detected," Hanjae called out. Multiple ships emerging from light speed. The sky lit up as the Ryuk fleet arrived. 20 ships, each larger than the first, took position above Earth's atmosphere. Their arrival created patterns of light that were visible even through the daylight. "They're trying to surround the planet," Jin explained. He turned to Do Young. "I need your help again. Those garden lights in your yard, they're actually part of our targeting system. Go turn them all on." Do Young ran to his yard. As he switched on each light, beams of energy shot up into the sky, creating a targeting grid. All across Cedar Grove, neighbors were activating similar hidden defenses. Bird baths, garden gnomes, and wind chimes revealed their true purpose. Hanji's voice carried over the neighborhood's emergency system. "All residents, please activate any outdoor lighting you have. Every light in this community is part of our defense network." The neighborhood lit up like a festival. Each light added to the defensive grid, strengthening their position. Jin watched the power readings climb on his screens. Defense grid now at 85%, the computer reported. Sufficient for main counterattack. The wreck ships began their descent, their weapons charging. But Earth was ready. Jin looked at his neighbors, now united in purpose. "Mrs. Lee, please transmit our response to their invasion fleet." Hanji spoke into her communication system, her voice clear and strong. The crystal-like sounds of the Ryuk language carried across space. On Jin's screens, the alien ships suddenly stopped their approach. "What did you tell them?" Do Young asked. Hanji smiled. "I told them that Earth is protected, and that this time, we're not hiding anymore." 3 months had passed since the night of the Ryuk invasion attempt. Cedar Grove looked normal again on the surface, but everything had changed. Jin's house had returned to its ordinary appearance, though everyone now knew what lay beneath the simple exterior. Do Young stood in front of the local court, wearing his best suit. The judge had just finished reading his sentence for the hate crime. 2 years of probation, mandatory community service, and full payment for the damaged Tesla. Jin had spoken at the hearing, explaining how Do Young had helped defend Earth after realizing his mistake. This had helped reduce the sentence, but Do Young knew he deserved punishment for his actions. The court also orders you to attend weekly diversity awareness classes, the judge announced, and you will work with the Cedar Grove Community Outreach Program. Do-young bowed his head. I understand, Your Honor. Thank you. Outside the courthouse, Jin waited by his new car. Another Tesla, but this time in silver. The quantum processors had survived the fire and been installed in the new vehicle. Ready to start your community service? Jin asked as Do-young approached. You mean at the defense installation? Do-young looked surprised. Jin smiled. The best way to protect Earth is to help people understand each other first. That's why we're turning the community center into an education facility. Mrs. Lee will teach languages, both human and alien, and you'll help us show people that appearances can be deceiving. Cedar Grove had become famous after the invasion attempt. News reports had called it the most important suburb on Earth. But its real transformation was deeper than that. The neighborhood had changed from a place of suspicion to one of understanding. Hanji had started teaching at the new education center. Her classes were always full, with people eager to learn about Earth's place in the galaxy. Today, she was teaching children about the Treaty of 2019 and the importance of unity in the face of cosmic challenges. The Ruck Collective still watches Earth, she explained to her class. But they know now that we are stronger together than apart. In the evening, neighbors gathered for their weekly community dinner. Tables filled Jin's backyard, where the defensive turrets were now disguised as garden lights. People from all backgrounds sat together, sharing food and stories. Do-young served meals as part of his community service. He had changed in these 3 months. The anger and suspicion were gone from his eyes, replaced by understanding and regret for his past actions. More rice. He offered to a young black family who had recently moved to Cedar Grove. They were scientists working with the defense program, no longer having to hide their true work. Jin watched from his porch, sipping tea with Hanji. Do you think they'll try again? She asked quietly. The Ryuk? Probably. But we're ready now. Jin looked out at the diverse crowd in his yard. And we're getting stronger every day. Above them, hidden defense satellites kept their endless watch. But Earth's real protection wasn't in the advanced technology or powerful weapons. It was in places like Cedar Grove, where people learned to move past their prejudices and work together. Do-young joined them on the porch, taking a break from his serving duties. I never thought I'd say this, he said, but I'm grateful for that night. Not for what I did. I'll always be ashamed of that. But for what it taught me. What it taught all of us. The sun set over Cedar Grove, painting the sky in beautiful colors. Somewhere up there, the Ryuk ships watched and waited. But they would find no weaknesses here. Not anymore. Earth's greatest defense had turned out to be something stronger than any weapon. A community united in understanding and purpose.